Good evening, everyone. This is David Dunroven. This is our first meeting of our book club. And I want to thank everybody for gathering around your computer. And I particularly want to thank the host of our book club, Judy Blunt, here to my left. And on the telephone, talking with us is Diane Hoffman. Can you say hello, Diane? Are you there, Diane?
Hello. Yep, I'm here. I'm catching up, but I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I wanted to start by saying a little something about book clubs, but I also a little housekeeping chart here first. If you're watching and you are on chat, be sure that you are on the book club chat, not the public chat, because we want to keep a record of this so we can answer all the questions or bring all the issues that you raise up for discussion at some point. And I don't want to have to go back to 2 different chat rooms to find that. So please, during all of these sessions, use the book club chat. And as I was getting ready for tonight, I decided to go online and to look and see if there were other online book clubs. And I found a site called onlinebookclub.org. And some of you may be familiar with it. I certainly was not familiar with it. But it's not at all like our book club. Most of the book clubs that I found were basically forums where people gathered around a book, and there was not people gathering at the same time in any kind of a conversational way. But one of the first questions I wanted to ask of our 2 participants here, Judy and Diane, is about book clubs. So let me, without further ado, introduce them a little more formally. And then one of the things I'd like you to both to address is, what are the advantages of having a book club? What do you see as people getting out of a book club that they can't get out of reading a book on their own? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judy Blunt, author of our first book, Breaking Clean, a longtime friend, a mentor to many, many writers. All of you know Mackenzie Cole. He was one of her students at the Creative Writing Program at the University of Montana. Judy has a big wake in Montana, and I'm just delighted that she's here with us. So, Judy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think this is an incredibly exciting precedent that we're setting. I love the idea of us narrowing our focus to this first reading adventure to Western women's literature. It is, I think, one of the hidden secrets of the West is our women authors. It's an amazing collection. It was very hard to pick just four. I grew up in eastern Montana on a wheat and cattle ranch south of Malta, Montana, and married a rancher in that same community and lived out there until I was in my 30s before I tailed it over the ridge, as they say. And over the divide, the other side of the ridge. And I think one of the things I brought with me from the place I grew up was something that's almost disappeared in the world today, and that is the community of storytelling. Before we had television, we were some of the last people to get electricity in the lower 48. Stories. Storytelling was a way of speaking. It was a way of communicating. It was a way of remembering family stories. And that was the sort of background that I brought with me to the University of Montana, starting as a bare-naked freshman with 3 little kids to support. So my adventures in academia have been a little more in that I was not raised to this. I was not raised to be a professor. I think that book clubs allow you to be excited about what you're reading. And they allow you to read difficult things that you otherwise wouldn't read, and then have someone else to share them with, somebody to talk about the excitement or the puzzlement or whatever the reading is stirring up. It helps you expand. I noticed this when I was in a literature course. Somebody said once that that if you wanted a degree in literature, they were free. All you had to do was go to a library. And I found that to be not true. I could have never absorbed what I needed to absorb and learn what I needed to learn had I not been in classes where people were accepted what they read. And so I'm a real believer in book clubs being the best part of it.
Did you know that my son, my oldest son, graduated from UM in English literature?
Oh,
yes, yes. And I have to tell you, I'm something of a science snob. I'm sure you run into
how does that happen?
And I did not fully understand or appreciate the amount of analytical powers, the kind of things that he came home with. I was truly impressed with.
Yeah.
And I think it was from that depth of discussions in class. He really became a much more astute reader, and he brought me along a little bit. I was just delighted.
We turn students loose with their BAs in English, creative writing, English lit. They're all the basic same degree with a skill set that is at the top of most bosses' wish list. Yeah, they know how to read, they know how to analyze, and they know how to articulate a response.
Excuse me?
Who doesn't want that?
Can I hear me? Yes. As an English major, I can honestly say that I benefited from those skill sets because it was one of the few degrees that actually taught you how to analyze events and things. And that actually was the best career training I ever could have had. And by the way, that's why I read this book a lot more carefully, knowing that I was going to be talking about it than I ever did before. And that's, I think, one of the things that book clubs are really good for is besides the sharing of your thoughts and the sharing of your insight, you read more carefully.
This is a great segue into you yourself, Diane. You have a degree in English literature, and you also have a master's in library science, do you not?
I do.
And you worked as a research librarian, and you also owned your own company, Huffman Information Services. Can you tell us a little bit about your past?
Well, my past is sort of like a patchwork quilt. Basically, I started out as a librarian because after I was an English major, I suddenly looked at it, and Judy, I had very good thoughts on this, and decided that there was no one who was going to make it in my field unless they were a man. So I decided to take some path that would serve me well, but where women could succeed. So I became a librarian, which, by the way, I happen to love being a librarian. And I also became a reference librarian, which is basically what I did was I became skilled in the use of information tools, skilled in the ways to find information and to analyze it. And that's how I worked with my students. But most of the time, I was doing so much work for them, I was working for the companies that created tools, too, because I would go to them and say, what I really need is this, and what I really need is that. And when they had new tools and they wanted them tested, they'd come to me. So my career took a segue out of the academic library and the research librarianship into creating tools for academics. And so for the next 30 years, I really worked with a series of different companies to create research tools for various people. And then I retired. Well, actually, in between, I started my own company. That's true, too. And that was actually a lot of fun because there I got to advise people as to what they should do with their information needs, but I could walk away if they didn't like it. Anyway, it has been a checkered career, but almost always very interesting.
And Diane, you are from Princeton, New Jersey, which is very close to New York City, are you not?
I am indeed.
People can see us in my family room here. I assume that you are in your own home. You have a home or an apartment? Where are you?
I have a home. I'm sitting in my study.
Very good. Very good.
Where I do all of the bird camming from.
Well, one of the things I wanted to cover with everybody is our respective roles and get everybody online understanding how we're moving forward with this book, Club. Again, this is something really new. I was not able to find any kind of a template online that is doing what we're trying to do. So I'm the process person. I'll try to keep us on time, and I'll try to direct traffic. Judy is our content person, and we couldn't do better than having somebody of Judy's caliber to help us walk through Western women's literature. She'll keep us focused in terms of how to discuss the book on these live sessions. Diane will be the online host, and that will differ in that twice a month on Wednesdays, and these are all on our website. Diane will hold a chat, and I do believe it's at 5:30 Mountain Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. And the first one will be coming up this Wednesday, and of course the topic will be Judy Blunt's Baking Clean. So the idea is that the online group can meet with Diane 2 times before we meet with the author to discuss the book. And Diane will take some notes and relay to me the kind of questions and discussions that you've been having. I will try to join those discussions on the chat, but I can't commit to it.
The only thing I'm going to say, Suzanne, is they're from 8 o'clock, 6 your time, 6 to 7 your time.
Thank you for the correction, Diane. You're absolutely right. 6 to 7 Mountain Time. That would be 8 o'clock Eastern Time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And Diane will be serving as a bridge between the online group of people and Judy, and we hope to have others join us, other authors or people who have experiences in the field that we will be discussing. And I'd also encourage you to leave comments on the blog post. I just updated the blog post regarding Judy's book. I put an interview. I thought your interview was just fabulous with Pacific University about creating nonfiction. Very, very interesting. And if you'd like to have your comments for other people to kind of dwell on and think about, that would be the place to leave them as opposed to the chat. The chat is more like a conversation. The comment is more like a note that you're leaving behind. So if you would follow that, that would be great. And we're going to start with Judy's book, Breaking Clean. And I would like to ask Judy just to say a little something about each of the books that she has chosen. Kind of why were these books that they spring to your mind?
Well, they spring to my mind in good company with about 25 others. So, if we decide to repeat this theme, we could so easily do so. The first one, Breaking Clean, was my own book, and I chose it because I had read it before. It's unusual to have a modern memoir written about 60s and 70s ranching communities from the inside. Albert Walsh, Mary Clemens Bloom, this collection of essays. She came up in the central Montana region on a ranch, very hardscrabble in the 50s and 60s. And I actually studied with Mary Bloom. She was a mentor of sorts, just because the young women writing about Western or ranching experiences had almost no one to follow. Certainly we were all, in a certain way, leaders. She became my mentor in that case. The dreaming of feeling captured, Janet Hale Campbell. I think it is so important to hear Native American experiences in the voice of Native American authors. Too often, the stories are appropriated by other authors. Maybe they're rendered absolutely accurately, but honestly, I think to really feel the heart of the story, it has to be her voice. And it's I think a lot of really, really good Clement Brown is more first, and that would be said almost anywhere in the Midwest. But this is a story of a young woman who comes west and discovers a place to belong that involves horses, that involves sheep herding, that involves conservation and environmentalism. And so this indeed is a more modern story yet. It isn't about the past, but about what perhaps could, be part of the future. So those are the 4 books that we're reading this time. And I really encourage you to, expand beyond the 4 that I can post a list of awesome books.
Well, let's do that. In fact, you had given me original list. There were more than that. Yeah. So if you already have a list, just give it to me, and I'll make sure that we put it up.
Yeah.
Because it's a really deep, rich genre, isn't it?
And it's new. There are some historical, original narratives and diaries and this sort of thing that we rely upon for women's stories from, the homesteading days and before. Very few women were writing the literary stuff in those days. There were people who kept records, and those are the ones who prior to about 1960. It's relatively new, I guess, in 1950s, that we were supposed to do this. For me, but, understand it. So they're modern stories. They're modern and of an age.
When I first moved back to Montana, I did join the book club, and one of the first things was not Western women, but Western literature. There were a number of women authors in it. I'm thinking of Mildred Walker. Yeah, I just loved her books. They were just fabulous, and she captured a lot of Teresa Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Writing the
home.
Yeah. And Willa Cather, of course, it's one of her short people who got it right. Writing about the Midwest, much of the West, but at the time she was writing about the West. Yeah. Kansas considers the West.
And I find one of the really exciting things about this book club is I was sharing my experiences of Western literature with women who are living in the West. And I think it's just really exciting. We have Canadians here. We have people all over the country who are going to be reading these books. And I think it's going to be really fun to hear your perspective, because your experiences are very different than those of us who were raised here. And I've often wondered how much of that being raised here I carry with me as a quote,
One of my experiences in traveling all over the country, reading from my book and touring with my book, has been the vast number of people who identify themselves in my book, even though the environment that I grew up in is totally different from this. But there's something about being a woman in the 60s and 70s. We're learning about feminism, but it's kind of like it has no place in our life. We have no place to put it, to experience it, really. And women would identify with that. I have letters from women in New York and Chicago and cities who said, I couldn't tell a cow from a mule, but I can tell you that story. And they identified with what it was like to be coming up age. And so I think that there's something that we can find that's true to us personally in almost all of these books, regardless of their sex.
I think that's really the essence of good literature, is it not? It's a human story. The geography may be different and the context a little bit different, but the story in itself rings true to the human condition. Well, I'm very excited. I have not read any of the other books on the list besides yours, and I'm very excited to go through them. And I wanted to ask you, Diane, I know you've been plotting some questions and some ways of facilitating the online chat. Can you share with us some of the things you've been thinking about?
Well, actually, Judy, one of the things that interested me most about your book is, and I told Suzanne this, it was like reading about a whole foreign country to me, a whole different country. and it was such an unusual experience, and yet I was very comfortable with what you were saying because you were really talking at a level way beyond a Western woman. You were talking at a level from your environment, and it was very interesting on that level. So within the book club, one of the things that I think we want to talk about, and that's why I'm hoping to have lots of questions, is comments on how people feel about their isolation and circumstance, and how they relate to this book, because just because you're not Western doesn't mean you can't relate to this book.
You know, one of the things that I had to come to grips with as a young ranch wife was the difference between isolation and solitude. And it could be one rainstorm could be the difference between isolation and solitude. Mm-hmm. And, you know, trying to manufacture solitude out of isolation is pretty grim business. But it was something that the pioneer women had to find a way to do. They had to find a way to enjoy the solitude, or at least live the solitude and not die of the loneliness.
You know, one of the things that has always been in my mind is I was raised by a man who was raised by 3 women on a ranch in Montana. And I am forever grateful for that upbringing, because he was a man who thought women could do, as he would say, what they damn well please. He was very unusual, and it was because he didn't have a male figure. He had his grandmother and his mother and his older sister on a ranch in the Belt Mountains south of Great Falls. And so your experience was foreign to me, in the sense of my father that built me up, you know, and made me realize that I think that women get so much of their identity through their father's eyes.
Well, I think it's also important to note that in writing a memoir, I mean, I'm thrilled that it's appreciated for sort of universal notes, but in the end, it's just one woman's story, and I can't hope to speak for women on ranches. So much has changed. I had a PBS correspondent ask me one time if there were a whole lot of little Judy Blunts running around out there. He kind of waved at the prairie. And I just started to laugh, and I said, heavens no. Little girls are empowered now in ways that I could not have dreamed of. You know, there's, of course, you know, if there are, I feel bad. If there are little Judy Blunts running around out there, I'm sad for them, but I honestly don't think there are anymore. You know, little girls don't put up with a lot anymore. And there's all sorts of television and computers and ways to level the playing field.
But Judy, do you not think that all of the hardship and adversity that you faced and overcame in many ways shaped what you are today, and you wouldn't have been that way if you had been so empowered?
It's hard to know. You know, if you like trying to prove a negative, it's hard to know. I truly believe that certainly the hardship. I went to school at the University of Montana. I took a full load of classes. I worked full-time, and I raised 3 kids. And of all of those 3 full-time jobs, taking care of the house, doing all of these things, they used to send me students when I was an advisor at the University of Montana who were coming back to school with, you know, one kid in the hopper and one in the cart, and thinking that I could tell them how to do this, how to master this, going to school and, you know, frying the bacon up in the pan and all of the stuff when you are good at solo. And honestly, I couldn't tell them what it was about my past. I think that what it was fear. It was terror. I had no place to go home to. If I failed, I had no net. I had no place to go. When I left the ranch, I left everything behind. And so I think it was part of it was fear. Is that good? I guess it sure as heck can be motivating, right?
The classic motivator.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. If you don't let it overwhelm you.
Well, for the book club, there are so many themes in this book that are really interesting and I think quite important to women. I hope that the book club will be bringing out all of those themes and developing them, because you've raised so many wonderful questions in here.
I agree, Diane.
I think the book has more questions than answers, which is what I like.
Yeah. I think a good book makes you think about your own life. And you start making some comparisons, and it reveals parts of your life, not in its entirety in any way, but little snippets that maybe you hadn't thought about before. And I guess that's one of the things I most like about a book club, is I think it does make you look at different perspectives, because my perspective is not going to be Diane's perspective. It's come at it from different experiences, so that certain things will ring true to me that won't ring true to somebody else. And you get that richness by involving the conversation with lots of other people. So before we depart, I wanted to ask two more questions. And one of them is why is the written word so much more powerful than the spoken word, Judy?
Well, because it can be heard further out into the world. The spoken word still has, I think it's going to catch up and overcome the printed word. I hate to see that happen, but see more kids listening to podcasts now than you see, reading books. Books aren't forever there. Books are like friends who wait for you when you have time to sit down. You don't have to tune in at a certain time. You don't have to, dial in. You just go to a chair and pick it up. And you can come back to the same book, as I do, again and again. I've read To Kill a Mockingbird probably 30 times, and I'll probably read 30 more before I'm, beyond reading. Because it's an old friend, and I go back to it and smile and remember fondly Black Beauty when I was a child was like that. And so there are some stories, I think, that just become so much part of who we are. They're like songs, and areas in our life can be remembered by reading that are going back to it.
What about you, Diane? Why do you think the written word is so much more powerful than the spoken word?
Well, it's funny. I was telling Suzanne earlier, I've been so used to doing audiobooks. This is the first book I've read beginning to end in a long time. And it is more powerful, but it's more powerful because I could stop and think about it. I was able to go at my pace. I could go back to previous pages and say, did I really think, did I actually read what I thought I read, or did I misread it? I mean, I could navigate the book, which you, as an audiobook or some of those others, or even a TV program, they're linear. They go from A to Z. But with a book, you can go back and forth, and to me, that's powerful, that navigating capability.
I love that because it's interactive in a way that young people now understand how you're interactive with a media source. I think books are interactive. I think that's a smart.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think writing demands more of the person, the author, and of the receiver. I think when you read the written word, you look at each word. You think about its relationship to the other words. And as you said, Diane, you can go back and say, no, why did she choose that word? What did she mean to convey? And that requires a certain thought process on the part of the reader, as opposed to hearing something and letting it just flow by. Can't, get down to the minute details. And I so agree with you, Judy. I mean, I traveled all to South America with a book under our hands, and I know my husband and I were in one place where we only had one English book, and we got stranded in a place in Argentina, and we were tearing pages off and sending them to we were pretty desperate. Okay, so the other question I wanted to, the final question I wanted to ask both of you is, if there were any things that you might recommend readers do to maximize their enjoyment or benefit from reading a book. Now, this goes back to some of these skills, these analytical skills that you've taught your students or that you have learned in college. But is there something that readers can do to really enhance the way that what they get from the book?
I would say get a map. Make a tactile reference of some sort. I'm not talking about nonfiction here, but I think also fiction, primarily nonfiction. I think it helps to have some sort of a map in your head, some place to put the images that you're going to be reading, or let them act themselves out in your mind. I've known people who do this. My friend Claire Davis says that she doodles, and she's an artist, and she will illustrate in a certain sense, books that she does, and it's a way of thinking. It's a way of kind of wrapping your mind around things and bringing them to life.
What about you, Diane?
Well, actually, that just made me smile, if you can hear a smile over the telephone, because what I used entirely in reading this book and what I flipped back and forth the most on was the map that Judy put in the front of this book. And I could not read that book without having that map near me, or I put a little tab on it so I could go back and forth. Which is funny because it was a very visual map that helped me organize where she was at what time and what was happening. However, I did also keep certain notes in the back, just because I wanted to remember them. Especially, and there were some things were so vivid in there that I actually did not need a map. I mean, the Blizzard of '64 was vivid. I think it's a very enjoyable book. Other than playing Western music when I read it, I like just absolutely sitting there and reading in my own head and actually experiencing it myself.
There's a number of interesting stories when the book first came out of fans who followed that map right down to my ex-husband's doorstep. I was talking about that. I'm called to mind the idea that we used to want, the roads to be paved, and until we came to understand that works both ways. Yeah. That means that we could get out more easily, but it also means other people can get in. It was one of those unforeseen effects, I guess, of having a map is that it was accurate enough that people could follow it.
Yeah. So. Well, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Diane, for being on the phone.
I look forward to more.
Yeah. And you will be on the chat this Wednesday at 6 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we will be discussing in greater detail then. We'll start our discussion of Judy's book. We will meet again Wednesday. I think it is, let me look here. I'm going to check my papers here. The 23rd, that's right. And then Judy will be back on the 4th. On the 4th of January. And then after Judy's book, we will move on to All But the Wolf by Mary Clearman Blue. And we will meet, again, Diane will have 2 chat sessions, and we will come back on February 15th, which, by the way, I'm going to announce now is my birthday. Yay. And I was a child of the 50s and 60s. And I wanted to follow this Western Women's theme, so I have a singer who is going to be coming and singing us Western Girls songs.
There you go.
After the book club.
I believe the word is gal.
Gal, that's right. And I was joking with Judy before we got started. I had gone online to see some of these ideas that other people had about why people do book clubs. And the Huffington Post said, well, you meet interesting people, and we certainly will do that. You read things that you wouldn't otherwise read, and we certainly will do that. Some books are just meant to be discussed, and I fully agree with that statement. Some books are meant to be discussed. Then it says you eat good food. And I thought, oh dear, this is where we're going to fall short. But then Judy said, wait a minute, I'll share with you some of my ranch recipes, and I'm going to hold her to it, ladies. And then she would give me some ranch recipes, and I'll put them up, and we can make our own snacks.
Will you mail some to me?
Well, try not to have, I'm thinking ranch recipes are like health foods for 50. So I'm going to scale things down and maybe just do the snacky thing.
Yeah, just the snacky things. But I'll post them up. We can have some fun with that part of it, too.
That would be fun.
What we're going to do, unless there's something on the chat that somebody would have a question or anything, and I think we will say good night. And thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next couple Wednesdays, and then again on the 4th of January. Thank you all. Good night from Lola, Montana. Want to say good night, Diane?
Good night. See you all on Wednesday.
Okay. Bye.
Goodbye.